Hey folks, it's that time again, and Fluval has sent another kit tank to check out. This is the Fluval Flora. I'm going to unbox it. I'm going to show you everything that comes in the kit. I'm going to show you what I'm going to keep out of the kit and what I'm going to replace with some slightly upgraded parts. And I'm going to compare it to the old one. It's all coming up right after this. Hey YouTube, this is Pecktec. I hope you finished out your year really well. I took a much needed break, and I'm back in the swing of things. I've got a new tank to build, and I'm going to take you guys partly through that today. So my idea with this video was to get it like just shy of aquascaping. We'll get it all set up except for the aquascape, and then I'll do another video to follow up. That'll be just planting the tank and really getting it set up. I didn't do this in the past, but I like to separate the two things. I think it just makes it easier. A lot of people have questions about maybe what's in the kit, and a lot of people have even more questions about how it's set up. So splitting those up makes it a little easier to manage. It also keeps it from being like a 30 or 40 minute long video, and keeps the information more succinct and specific. One of my very first videos where I appear on screen and present something to you was a Fluval Flora video. That was over 8 years ago. But blah blah blah, I'm sure you'd like to know all about this aquarium, so let's get right to the point. This new 14.5 gallon set is a 15-inch square, so it's 15 wide, 15 deep, and 15 tall. How many centimeters is 15 inches?
That would be 38.1 centimeters.
Or 38.1 centimeters in all directions. And 54.8 liters. It's a big tank. It's much bigger than its predecessor, which weighed in at, I think, 7.8 gallons. This is an aquarium kit, so it does come with a number of things. And there are more things that you're going to need to set up this tank than what comes in the box, but it does a good job of kind of getting you started and getting all the important pieces there to you. The packaging on this kit really does a great job of describing all the features that are inside. It does come with the CO2 system we'll look at in a second. It comes with a lid. It comes with a filter. It comes with a really interesting light that I think you guys are going to love. I love this light. Now price-wise, this is right in between a Fluval Flex 15 gallon, which is about $100 less, and the Fluval Flex 32 gallon, which is about $100 more. Right now, online retail price is around $230 for this kit. My guess is most of the extra money you're spending there is probably in the light, which I do like a lot. I haven't used it on a tank this big, but it has worked well on my smaller tank. Packaging-wise, it looks like a really neat kit, and I'm excited to get it out of the box. So why don't we do that? Let's take a real look at it, see what it really looks like inside here. Ready? All right, what a cool bunch of stuff. Wow. Okay, so here's the insides of the Flora kit, and I want to quickly go over all the things that are included inside of this set. First off, there's a little planted tank guide. Now this is a kind of a short, small pamphlet, and yes, it does kind of upsell some of Fluval's other products, which is fine, but it'll give you a good idea of maybe where to start. So if this is your first planted tank, it does give you a little bit of reference that you can read to kind of help get you started in understanding how to keep plants in an aquarium. Another thing it's got, one of my favorite features by far, is this light. I reviewed this light on its own. I put it on the old style Flora aquarium, and it's been doing great. That's the tank I call the face tank. I've been running this light for over a year on that tank, and I really like it. I'm excited to see if it does as well on a bigger tank. This is substantially bigger than the tank I've been running it on. You can program it in the Fluval app. I'm going to show you a little bit more about this later, because it's you can go pretty deep on details with this light. The next thing I want to show you is an Aqua Clear 20. This has been Fluval's kind of mainstay filter. This is the only filter I know with like a really dedicated fan base. There are people that just like live and die by these filters. And I gotta say, For a hang on the back filter, I really like them a lot. It's really simple. I've used it for my face tank for a long time. It's done really well. It's fairly reliable for a hang on the back filter. I don't really love hang on the back filters though, and I'm probably not going to include it in my setup, but it does come with this, and this is a great starter filter for this tank. So another real reliable, proven product inside of this kit. And so the last thing is this CO2 kit. And this is a miniature CO2 kit. This is a cool little holder. It'll hold this sort of smaller CO2 bottle. This is a small but large for the small ones. Okay. It's a little bit bigger than the ones that used to come with. And these are kind of interesting in that they can be hung. It's got a little hook where it can be hung onto the back of the tank, or it can just stand. It's got a little stand and it'll stand right up on its own. It also has a little cap with a small regulator, which is pretty neat. It has a diffuser, and it's got a bubble counter, and I'm pretty sure this probably works as a check valve as well. This is a neat little kit. Oh, it's also got some CO2 safe hosing in here, which we will definitely keep. This is an interesting little CO2 kit. It's really small, and it's a great beginner set. Since I've been in the hobby and I've opened and purchased lots and lots of different CO2 related items, I'm probably going to swap out a lot of this CO2 stuff, but we'll get into that a little bit later. But this would definitely be a great kit to kind of get you started, to kind of get the ball rolling with CO2, especially if this was your only tank. If you just had this tank to deal with and maybe not a lot of other tanks, these small ones are fine. If you've got a lot of stuff to do, if you need things to be a little bit more automated, I recommend maybe moving into the larger CO2 tanks if you want to do CO2 at all. It comes with two other chemicals here. We got a Micronutrients Fertilizer in a pretty decent sized container of that. And it also comes with, what are they calling this? Fluval Biological Enhancer. And this looks to be some biological stuff, which we'll add as we're setting up the tank. And biological supplements, usually they help start up a new tank. They, a lot of times they'll have the beneficial bacteria kind of baked into this chemical concoction. You can pour this in along with your setup and kind of get your tank on the road to being cycled. This kit also includes a lid, which is really important. I think is really important. I have a hard time finding lids. I'll end up making my own lids if it doesn't come with a lid. So it's rimless, and yet it has a lid. This lid has a cutout, which I've already cut out a little bit in order to facilitate the aqua clear. And it's got smaller cutouts on the sides that you can use for maybe cabling or something else that you might want to cut out and put in there. It is open in the middle, so the light will go directly through there, and I'm sure that's what it's for, is not to cut the light that's coming from above. It's a nice light, but it's not a particularly strong one. The big advantage I find with these lights, though, is that I can run them all day long because I can ramp them up and then ramp them down. So there'll be a really low power at different parts of the day and then full power right in the middle of the day, just like the sun would. And that extended photo period and sort of the different effects I get from the different colors of lights, I think makes up for the fact that that this light maybe isn't as strong as some of the other ones. Although it seems quite bright. When it's at its pinnacle, when it's at its peak, it seems pretty bright. Lids like this don't perfectly stop evaporation. Of course, it's got a really large gap here in the middle, but it definitely will help a little bit. It's also going to help by right at the corners of your tank where your fish would be likely to jump. It's going to have a little bit of protection from that. So unless they jump like right in the middle and come up, or you have something where or shrimp can walk out that way, you should be good. It should be good to protect your fish, keep them from jumping out on you. Tell you, looking around the sides and looking at the seams and stuff, it seems to be really clean. I think they've done a really good job of sealing this. Let's hope so, right? But it doesn't look too goopy or anything like that. It doesn't look like, it looks like it was done professionally and not nearly as slap shot as some other aquariums I've seen. The white background was an interesting choice. I'm actually kind of having trouble figuring out how they did the background. I can't tell if it was cut. It doesn't feel like there's a film or anything on here. I'm sure they probably melted a film onto the back glass. But you can apply suction cups. Suction cups still seem to work on this. The white background might be a deal breaker for some of you. I don't think that that's the kind of thing that maybe everybody will want. I basically had that going with the face tank that I'm replacing on here. So it doesn't really, it's not going to bother me. I find that there are other kind of interesting light effects you can do when you've got sort of a translucent background like this. Most of my aquascapes, I tend to put black in the background because it really makes the plants pop and show up really well. But this doesn't bother me, and it'll be kind of a neat way to kind of do something else. The old Fluval Flora, kind of its claim to fame is it included this, this foam background that was attached. Now, all the Fluval Floras that I had that had this attached, these all came out. They weren't put in very well. They'd have like maybe two little things of silicone hold them in. And when I made the zombie tank, I had attached the zombie to this thing and then just covered it with silicone, and that one will probably never come out. But that is kind of an interesting change from this kind of painted foam background to this clear background. The other thing is, of course, its size. The old tank was about, I think it was like 7.5 gallons or something like that. It was not quite 8 gallons. And if you included this big piece of foam, it's probably even smaller. It also included a glass lid that covered the entire top and just had a small hole. So that was different. It included an internal filter that I didn't really care for. It was kind of a box filter that would go inside. And that was sort of your trade-off, I think, for the glass lid. The old kit also included a small bag of stratum, which this did not include, and it included a mat that goes on the bottom, which I didn't see in there either. Stratum, of course, is Fluval brand's plant soil, and it's what I'll be using, or part of what I'll be using when I plant this tank. The old version of this tank also included a 13-watt light versus this light, which is like has infinite possibilities. So another great thing about this light is it's very adjustable, and that you can tighten and loosen these things. This moves up and down. It'll turn on this axis. You can bring this in and out a little bit to kind of get it just where you want. It's got some cable management going on underneath here. Goes down through there. It's all nice and neat. Just one of the first things I did was program my light, and it starts off with maybe 6 different points. And I can change the light temperature, I can change the amount of time it's on, how quickly or how slowly it ramps up. I can tell it, I can give it a light to be on in the off hours if I want just a really dim light, you know, like maybe 1% of any of the colors to go all night, and or not. I can make it go completely black. You can add in more time points, they call them, and do all kinds of different granular settings. It's all the stuff that I always wanted to do with LED lights. Having that kind of granular control over the color and the amount of time and the intensity of your lights throughout the day is really neat. I think it's a really interesting approach. And it lets my aquariums be on longer because I can kind of have it ramp way down for the afternoon and evening, and then give myself kind of a nice warm sunset-y glow to go kind of into the wee hours of the night, so I can enjoy my tanks longer. I noticed that the fish really seem to react to the different time points in the day too, and become super, super active right at dusk and sometimes in the morning if I'm there to see it. So I think being able to program your lights like that could be a real interesting way to really see or bring out maybe mating behaviors in fish that really seem to notice when it's a true sunrise or a sunset. Now, as far as where this tank is going in my house, I'm going to be replacing my face tank. I'm not going to take the face tank down. I'm going to move it upstairs. The face tank is it's in the same aquarium that came with the original Fluval Flora set. I got it at the Chicago Aquatic Experience, like an aquascaping contest. It's one of my favorite sizes and shapes of aquariums. It's not super small, not super big. It's kind of a good in-between. But I'm really excited to have the extra room to really work with this. And the place where it was sitting is about the only place that will fit without some modifications. That's definitely something to consider in this. In particular, the 15-inch depth. I found it was, there's not a lot of aquarium stands that are 15 inches deep. This marble top that I have over here works perfectly. It's a little bit bigger, or quite a bit bigger, than any of the dimensions. It gives me a lot of room to kind of move that around on there and get it just where I want it. Now, as I was showing you these things, I maybe brought up a couple of things that I'm going to use and some stuff that I'm not going to use. So one area I really think I can improve the setup is I'm going to go ahead and upgrade my hang on the back filter. Definitely nothing against the Aqua Clear 20 filter. If I didn't make it clear earlier, this please don't hate me for not using them. There's a huge fan base for these. They're great filters, and left unwrapped, what I might do is I might give it away in a future video. That'd probably be the coolest thing to do with that. What I am going to use is this 107 canister filter. If you've been watching the show for a while, you know I unboxed this for a while ago, and I said I had a little project maybe I'd use it for. Here's the project. I knew right away I wanted to use the canister filter, more because I can really load it full of biological material that I already have, so I can start it off with a really huge amount of biological and just get it cycled really quick. I think having a little bit of an improved water flow will be neat. I've got some other things that I'm planning on doing. Now, instead of the standard intake and outflow for this aquarium, I have purchased some glass versions of that. I've got a lily pipe inflow here, and I've got the outflow over there. I'll break that out in a little bit. This is super fancy and unnecessary, but I'm really, I want this to be a showpiece, and I'm kind of busting out all the stops. Plus, I bought these for an Aqua Shopper video a long time ago. And I've opened them up, and I kind of looked at it and I put it back in here. I originally planned on using all of this on the 20-gallon tank. The 20-gallon tank's sort of hidden upstairs away from stuff, and this is literally right in the downstairs middle of my house, so I'm going to go ahead and do these prettier things down here. Now for the heater, I found this. This is the PetSmart brand name heater. What do they call it? Top Fin. And it's a 100-watt heater. And I got this specific, well, I've got a smaller version of this in one of the specs upstairs, and I think it's been doing a really great job. So I decided to try a little bit larger one for this tank and just kind of see how it does. This is one of those heaters that you don't adjust the temperature. It's preset to 78 degrees, or what it thinks is 78 degrees. It's a set it and forget it. You basically submerge it in your tank someplace near some circulation, and it's good to go. I got this mainly because of its size. It's really, really small, and for the price and the size, this was the smallest and least expensive, so it kind of hit two categories, and I decided just to pick it up since I like the smaller one so much. Because I went with the lily pipes, I'm not going to be able to use the hose that comes with the 107, and I've made some slight modifications to existing hose. I also had to slightly modify my cabinet, and by that I meant it was going to fit. It was so close to fitting. I was going to do all this. I had all this planned, and I kind of put the canister in there to kind of see, oh man, I got plenty of room. You know, it might bend a little bit, which isn't good, but I've got plenty of room in there. But no, once I put the hoses on top of the canister filter and they were sticking out, it was way too tall. So I kind of just drilled a hole in the bottom of my cabinet. Now, as far as CO2 goes, I'm going to start off with this. I'll probably go ahead and use this little canister and this holder here. Probably go ahead and use their little setup that they provided, except for maybe the bubble counter and this, because I've bought so much CO2 stuff over the years. I've got all these cool glass bubble counters, and I've got some neat diffusers and other things. So I'll probably use those and kind of put these in with my supplies in case I need them for another time. But I'll be using the major components of the CO2 kit, at least for a little while. These little canisters really don't last very long, and I more than likely, what I'll do is eventually, if I decide I want to go with CO2, and that's not something you have to use. CO2 is great, and it does work really well, but you definitely do not have to use CO2 in a plant and tank. It's definitely a premium touch. Really, the best scenario for CO2 is to have a regulator with a solenoid. I wish they made little tiny ones. That would be super cool. But they don't. Not that I know of, anyway. You can sometimes get things sized down, so it'll work, but there aren't a lot of little tiny solenoid versions of these things. That would be neat. I always use the supplemental chemicals that are included. Some fertilizer is always good, and this stuff, some beneficial bacteria literally is always handy, especially with a new tank. A lot of this you're meant to you put in a certain amount to begin with, and then you kind of maintenance with a smaller amount. Sometimes I'll do that, or I'll just dump it all in there. Okay, so let's get this tank in place. I'm going to set up the filter, set up the CO2 and everything else, and we'll stop just shy of aquascaping it and do that later. Here we go. Okay, get this hose as far as it'll go. I'll push my clip down over kind of between these ridges and out of the way. I'm going to start tightening it. Make sure it's really tight. I like to make sure if it turns a little bit, that's okay. It does need to be tight. I'm going to leave it there. If it needs to be even tighter, I'll take more measures. Hopefully this will work. That'll come straight up that way. We'll see. We'll see how this goes. Okay, so now that I have the hoses on, I'll go ahead and stick this under the cabinet in the special hole I've created. Okay, so here are both the lily pipes out of the package, so you can kind of get a sense of what they look like. They are glass and transparent, which will make them help them to disappear inside the aquarium. Also makes them very fragile. I'm terrified I'm going to break one of these. If I do, there are other options, of course, that I can use. They have a suction cup. This is meant to go on the back of the aquarium, and that's why it's important that even though it's got the frost, you can still stick things to the back of it. At least for this project, it's important. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the plastic hose. It does fit. It goes right up to the top here. I'm going to place these around. I might notch one of these things out in the back. I originally planned to use the aqua clear, so I've already slotted out this little piece of plastic in the back right through here. So I'll probably go ahead and use that for the glass pieces. And but maybe in the future, if I decide to, I might go ahead and pull these little slots out, and I could put one on either side. I'm not really certain they'll fit, but it's definitely an option too. I'll be tightening these very carefully to the hose. So the hose fits on there. It's pretty snug though. I'll work my way up there, and I'm going to put this on just to kind of keep it a little extra tight. I'm going to very gingerly close that up. And then the canister filter should be set. Now these hoses are plenty long enough. And you don't want to leave too much slack coming from the filter, because that'll just be more effort if this thing has to push it through a 90-degree turn or anything like that. A 90-degree turn is actually the equivalent of increasing it by several feet. So you don't want any gaps or anything like that. You want to pretty much go straight up from the filter as close as it can, come straight up from the filter and then into the back of the intake, or the return in the intake. So, all right, so I've got the input and outflow all set up and connected to the canister filter. It's set up in what I think it's a pretty safe manner. I think it's going to work out pretty good. The way this comes out of the cabinet and then goes up here is a little awkward, and it's kind of making it hard to keep the pipes straight. Definitely would be better in a traditional cabinet where it could just kind of come straight up. But I don't know. We'll see how that works. Okay, so here are some things. I've got both from the CO2 kit that came with it, which would be like this piece and the little regulator here. But I've also got a little checker. This measures the level of CO2 in the tank using this reactive chemical. It kind of mixes with oxygen inside of there, and it tells you approximately what CO2 level you're at. I've got some little glass diffusers. I've got a check valve. This keeps from turning this little setup into a siphon. Basically, you put a hose in one side. This kind of interrupts the hose. You put this in your hose somewhere before the regulator, usually towards the top of the tank. And you want the air or the CO2 to move in the direction of, usually there's something pointing it. So they'll see this little pointy here. Sometimes there's an arrow on one of these. Sometimes you just see a point, but you know that it's going to go past this bladder, and it kind of burps and then goes on through, but it won't let anything liquid go past here. So that won't go down and get in your tank or mess up your regulator or anything like that. So it's going to go somewhere in that line. I've also got this little U-shape. This little U-shape just kind of helps the hose go over the top of the tank without kinking it up, so there won't be any kinks or anything like that. Your hose will go into here, then out to here, and then into your diffuser. All of these things are pretty inexpensive too, but I had them sitting around and I've been wanting to use it. I also have this drop checker. This will fill with water, right? And little CO2 bubbles will come up, and you can count the amount of bubbles that come out to tell you approximately how much CO2 you're getting, and that tells you where to turn off the regulator. So you're going to turn it on, this will bubble up. And these versions aren't necessarily better in any way. In fact, in some ways, they're probably not as optimized. A lot of times you can find something where you can count bubbles and be a diffuser and a check valve all in one unit. Those exist. But I like this kind of all glass thing that I'm doing inside of there, and I just wanted to try it. I've had these for years and haven't used it, so no time like the present. I'm also using this hose, which I assume this is CO2 resistant hose that came with the CO2 kit that came with the Flora. And with that, I'm ready to get this all set up. Right, so here's the regulator, and we're just going to pull off this little part here. So it's got a hole in the back. Hose is going to go through here, attach onto this little nipple here, and that slides back down. Tighten that up, and this part's ready. Once it pierces, we should see pressure. Okay. Didn't hear anything, but we definitely have pressure on here. Let's let you know it's full. I'm going to go ahead and put this in the holder for now. I'm going to give myself just a little bit of slack here. Go ahead and trim it right there. I'm going to take the check valve, and I'm pretty sure this is right. The air is going to be going this way. We'll go ahead and put that in the mix here. And we'll go ahead and do the other side. Continue the line. And not far up from this check valve, I'm going to stick the bubble counter. Okay, sometimes you can encounter part of the hose where it's just too difficult to slide on there, even with some moisture to assist. And what you can do, you have to be very careful with this. What you can do is just kind of heat it up just a little bit, not a lot. It really doesn't take much at all. And you just try to work it onto the end of this. It will be stretched and become pliable, of course, because it's warm. Sometimes it takes a couple of tries. It's probably a little long. We'll see. But once it works, it just goes right on. This can be a bit of a pain to do. Come on, go there. It's a little easier off camera, I'll say that. Okay, there we go. Once this cools down, this will start to tighten up again. And this will be a perfect fit right there. And it's important with your bubble counter, make sure that the bubbles are going to go up, of course. And what I've done is I put it before the check valve. So to fill this with water, I'm just going to let it sit and kind of see if it happens on its own. It might form a siphon and just kind of bring water down into here. And then, of course, it'll stop right here at the check valve before it goes any further, you know, into the mechanisms or anything like that. So that's why I've done the check valve here, and then a short distance later done the bubble counter. We'll see how that works. It probably won't. I usually anticipate that things won't work out just right. And I've got these suction cups. Oh, it looks like it fits on the hose. I'm going to see if I can use that to sort of manage where this is. So let's get this U piece on. This, thankfully, is much easier than the other parts. Then the last piece in the line is going to be this glass piece, which is going to just attach right here on the end. I'm going to put this in the tank and kind of test it out. And that's it. CO2 is set up. I moved that light over just a little bit to sort of help accommodate this on the other side of that plastic there. Just because of the way this works is a little bit better. So I'll be able to turn this, check the bubble counter right here to see the rate of the bubbles. And then, of course, they'll come out right there. By putting this underneath this flow, I'm hoping that that will kind of help encourage some of the bubbles to linger in the tank a little bit more, maybe get pushed around a little bit more. I've also seen people do it underneath their intake down there too, but this works pretty well. I've got it really low in the tank also and down towards the center. Of course, this will probably stay a little bit better once I have water in here to help those suction cups out. But it should be easy to hide right here in the middle. And being glass and stuff, maybe it'll kind of blend in with the backgrounds. I'll also throw in this heater in here. Compared to this glass stuff, this is going to stick out like a sore thumb. So maybe I can Aquascape camouflage this thing a little bit better. But I'm going to go ahead and kind of get in the tank and ready. There's a chance I might be able to put some aquascaping or something to kind of cover this and make it less noticeable. Or I could pull it out all together and put fish in here that are good with room temperature. I'm not sure I'm going to go with that. I'm going to leave this here for now, but I might reserve the right to change this out later. How exciting. Now I'm all set to aquascape this weekend. The tank's ready to go, pretty much. I've got to go through my aquascape and decide if I'm going with rocks or I'm going with wood. I can tell you right now, I'm thinking maybe spider wood, something simple that doesn't clog the filters up too much. I've got a whole lot of dragonstone out there I could possibly use. I've got a special mixture that I like to do with the substrate. I've got some Fluval stratum, which I'm going to be using. I gotta say my opinion, like right off the cuff before I put anything in it, is what a great kit to start aquascaping with. It's a little bit higher end with the kind of that rimless look, but it's still got a lid. So if you have any questions about this tank or the older version or anything I talked about today, be sure to leave them down below. I'll do my best to get to every one. Be sure to tune in next week when we actually plant this thing. I'm going to do a special substrate mixture with some Fluval stratum and a few other things. I'm going to pull plants from basically all the other aquariums in the house, so that'll be an interesting mix of things to put in there. And it's all happening next week. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss a video. Ding the bell if you're wondering when I post. So until we meet again, follow your bliss, keep a clean tank, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye. To assist, and what you can do, you have to be very careful with this, but what you can do. So my goal with this video, and also this is sort of a great on one of these panels. Which panel is it? I just saw it. 15. This new 14.5 spitting everywhere. You can program it. Okay. Now, as far as where this tank is going to go in my house, I thought I'd keep it right here on the kitchen table. I've got a lid for it. I've got a